So what is the impact of all of this? The politics, the economic issues. Joining me now, Mark Hamrick, who's a senior economic analyst at Bankrate, and Rina Shah, founder of Relaxed Strategies and a former senior congressional aide. It's great to have both of you here. There is all of this chaos, right? And especially if you're looking at this from the outside, I would say outside the U.S., Mark, what is the broader impact of the chaos in Washington, the strikes that we're seeing, the economic concerns? What does that do to the U.S. standing?
It's very disruptive, Erica, and it's very worrisome because think about U.S. taxpayers as essentially being stakeholders in the United States government. And this is the way of the House saying, in a sense, thank you for your service. In other words, we're not exactly prioritizing delivery of services that the taxpayers have paid for. But there's a far more serious and potentially damaging impact that these elected officials are flirting with. And that is a potential debt downgrade of U.S. Treasury debt, which we are increasingly reliant upon. And if that were to happen, it would raise the cost of borrowing. It would make essentially the U.S. economy more expensive to do business with. And it really lowers the global standing of the U.S. when we are asking everybody to essentially help to finance the debt. You know, you ask sort of, what are the downsides of this, but what is the upside? It's toward what end? There is no positive end of this. And so it's incredibly self-inflicted and unintelligent.
I think you make such an interesting point, and Rina, I'd love to dive into this with you of what is the upside. There doesn't seem to be a real plan or strategy here. I mean, you have Donald Trump and Elon Musk, essentially, they tanked this bipartisan bill, right? So you had Democratic and Republican buy-in on that. That gets tanked. Option B doesn't work. We're not really sure what an option C is. And then you have Trump this morning saying, making it very clear what he wants to happen. He wants this government shutdown because he wants it to happen under Joe Biden. Does this end up coming back to hurt Donald Trump as he's moving into his second term?
With the chaos on Capitol Hill right now,
Go ahead, Rina.
Yeah, with the chaos on Capitol Hill right now, there's no clear end game, whether it's for President-elect Trump or Speaker Johnson. At first, it seemed like this was about, putting egg on the faces of Democrats. But in this next month, in which Joe Biden is still very much the president and Democrats can't have a seat at the table, I believe there was no need for Elon Musk to inject himself at the 11th hour. He forced the hand of Speaker Johnson. And what it might result in, Erica, here is that Speaker Johnson could very well lose his speakership. When we look at these razor-thin margins that have defined this era of congressional lawmaking and have frankly made the House chamber look like a place that gets nothing done, we not only see the congressional disapproval ratings drive up, but we see lawmakers scrambling to try for the most extreme solutions. In this case, just yesterday, it was trimming a bill that was thousands of pages into a few hundred pages. And that's where they, meaning Speaker Johnson and Musk and Trump, thought they could appease these conservatives that have been screaming about reckless spending from Washington. No such deal. It failed on the floor of the House because Speaker Johnson did not take the pulse of his caucus. And frankly, Musk is an amateur and doesn't understand how this works. It took weeks and months for a legislative compromise that was torpedoed at the 11th hour simply to try to play reindeer games.
One of the reasons it was torpedoed, too, 38 Republicans voting against it, is because of this push to raise the debt ceiling. Mark, how detrimental could that be?
Well, in the very near term, I don't think it is because we have many months before the so-called X date occurs when the rubber really hits the road in the sense of the government truly not being able to meet its obligations. But the risk is there with respect to the rating agencies, as I mentioned earlier. And every time our elected officials in the House, in this case, demonstrate their incompetence, that is watched by global financial markets, participants all over the world who are investing in the United States, including in the equity market, as well as American-based investors and the rating agencies. And so it undermines trust in government. And I want to mention one thing that's very important, Erica, and that is the low trust in institutions we have in this country, which is essentially a modern phenomena. And elected officials in Washington rank toward the top of the list with the lack of trust. We did a survey of Americans at Bankrate asking them about whether they expect their finances will improve in the coming year. The majority said they did not expect they would improve in the coming year. And among the top reasons that they cited was the work work done by elected officials or to translate perhaps some of the work that's not done by elected officials.
Yeah, I think it is important to translate to that what is not happening, you know, which sets up, I think, very well some comments that we just heard from Dusty Johnson. I just want to play those and then get your take on the other side.
I don't see any real value in pessimism. Everybody around here is always, oh, woe is me, and everything's going to heck. The reality is we need to get this done. It will be exceptionally stupid if we don't get this done. And I always believe that cooler heads will prevail and that we will actually do our job around here.
It sounds great, the idea of it. Cooler heads will prevail. We're going to get this done. The reality is, we know compromise has become a dirty word on Capitol Hill. Rina, I mean, it's almost quaint what we hear from the congressman there. Has that ship sailed?
I don't think so. And maybe that's why, as a former creature of the House and somebody who still works in politics, I'm optimistic that something can be crafted. But this was a most unusual moment. We've always seen Congress get to the point where they have to kick the can down the road, extend again, and keep the government open for only a finite period of time, at which they have to meet again and come to this legislative compromise. I just am not sure that we can find our way out of this era of 11th hour governing and essentially trying to serve the American people by inserting oligarchs into the equation. I mean, it's amateur hour when you think you can kill a bill and something will just crop up out of nowhere. At the end of the day, though, I do think that today they will sit down, they meaning Speaker Johnson and his allies, and try to not only get to what at the heart of what the Freedom Caucus folks want, but also bring Democrats back to the table, which they were not at when Musk and Trump injected themselves into the picture. Democrats were pushed away from the table, not even invited. That's not how Washington functions. And at the end of the day, the only thing that will change all of this is true systemic reform. I know a lot of people out there are feeling really like all hope is lost if one party really controls all three branches, as it's been put. But the House is a place where compromise is necessary and vital to legislation getting passed. I am hopeful that, as the congressman put it, cooler heads will prevail in these next few hours so that we will not be shut down at 12:01 tonight.
We will be watching. Rina, Mark, appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Just